I'll tell you a story. Many years ago, when I was in my 20s and living in London and leading a life that seemingly was exciting and glamorous, I found myself getting iller and iller in a very unspecified way. I was getting more and more depressed. I saw lots of doctors and they found nothing wrong with me at all. And then someone recommended that I go and see this Chinese doctor. He was an old man and he listened carefully to me, did a few tests, and then after a week or two he said, I have the answer. I can make you well. You must give up your job, you must leave London, and you must go back to the land. In fact, I didn't. It took a year or two, but eventually I realized he was right. I need the earth. I need to plant things with my hands to feel well, to be well in my own mind. And here at Chelsea, surrounded by all these incredible plants and the brilliant design and the prize-winning vegetables, sometimes we can forget that actually gardening is personal. It's not for other people. And it's so important for our well-being. And on today's program, we're going to look at the ways that gardening and gardens are so important to so many of us for our mental health and well-being. Joe, what does gardening mean to you? Why do you garden privately at home?
Privately? I mean, professionally I garden a lot, but it just means everything to me. It's constant creativity. I go to bed thinking with ideas of what I'm going to do. It connects me with the seasons, with nature, and I just know how good it is for my soul. It's a passion. I can't stop.
Fair enough, fair enough. Now, coming up on this evening's coverage of the RHS Chelsea Flower Show 2021, an event supported by M&G. I will take a look at how the Japanese approach to simplicity in garden design can be the key to decluttering our minds.
Don't worry if you don't have a garden, though, because Arit is championing the healing power of houseplants.
And the Radio 2 DJ and presenter Zoe Ball shares how gardening has been her lifeline through turbulent times in recent years.
Now we begin today in a sanctuary garden that really encapsulates the turbulent 18 months for us all. It's the Finding Our Way NHS Tribute Garden by designer Naomi Ferret-Cohen. And it's a beautifully designed little space, a sunken garden, so you really feel as if you're in amongst it. This pergola is beautifully built. It's absolutely gorgeous, and I love the two seats either side where people can gather and talk to each other. It's a very sociable space, but you can hear water throughout this garden. The water starts by trickling down the outside of the pergola into a couple of pools, and then it runs down these gorgeous rills into this pool at the bottom, the elliptical pool, and the sound of it is just right. Water, when it's too loud, can be dominant in a small space like this, but it works beautifully. Then we've got the planting, a mixture of dahlias and nithophias and grasses, uplifting planting. And being a sociable space, you sort of want to feel energized by a garden, and it works absolutely beautifully. Well, this garden came about when Naomi joined forces with a friend from a very different walk of life, whose experience on the front line during the pandemic helped inform the design.
My name is John Frater, and I'm a Professor of Infectious Diseases at the University of Oxford. My day job is to run a research group where we study new therapies for HIV and immune responses, so how one might make a vaccine. When COVID struck, I got a call to come and help and run one of the general COVID wards at the John Radcliffe Hospital up the road here in Oxford, and basically everyone came together within the NHS. You know, from the doctors to the nurses, pharmacists, porters, kitchen staff. And despite everything else that was going on and the horror of what we were seeing with COVID, by pulling together, we could get everyone through this. And in particular, I think that is kind of where the NHS is so amazing. There was a feeling that somehow we had to sort of recognise, mark what was going on. So back in 2018, we'd done a garden at Chelsea about HIV, and there'd been a really amazing response. The question was, could you do a garden about COVID? You know, the first person I wanted to talk to was Naomi.
So during the pandemic, I felt very privileged to be able to walk up here. We've got the South Downs here, and then you can see Brighton over here. In the midst of what was going on with coronavirus and family life, I was homeschooling and working. I get a phone call from John, and he's said to me, "Do you want to do a show garden?" I said, "Well, yes." And then I said, "What would it be about?" And he said, "The coronavirus." And I thought, oh my goodness, this is a huge subject to be talking about. So yeah, let's talk a bit more and come up with some ideas. I'm really looking forward to see John. It's been a while since we've seen each other. We've had lots of Zoom meetings online, so to see him face to face will be really lovely.
Naomi, hi, how are you?
Hi John, great to see you. It's been ages, hasn't it?
It's been too long.
I know.
No, it's been a crazy year and a half, really, hasn't
It really has.
So this is the design for the Finding Our Way NHS Tribute Garden.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Let's hope you like it.
It looks incredible.
Oh, thank you. That first initial fear is represented in the, I've got the big structures, and it felt like you were sort of standing on the edge of like looking down and what was going on with coronavirus, and it was really quite scary for everybody.
I really love the pools and how they sort of link everything together.
Yeah, well, that's a representation of people coming together to try and help that one cause for the NHS. But also, we wanted the garden to feel like it was a relaxing space of time to reflect on what has happened.
And I think that's really important, isn't it? This is crazy. It's like a jungle, Naomi.
I know, but it's great, isn't it?
It is great. So look, you know I'm completely clueless.
Yes.
Tell me, are these some of the plants we might be using in the garden?
Yeah, so we're here at Sussex Prairies. This is one of my local gardens that come to, and I brought you here so you can actually see some of the plants that we'll be using. We'll be using things like salvias because they bring
this
a
is
nice,
a salvia.
yeah, it's a lovely salvia. It brings lovely height. The mixture of the grasses, the echinaceas and the asters all together, and that brings the soft tones that I was talking about, and they sort of sway in the wind. You see how soft it is, and it's just, that's the sort of feel that we're trying to create in Chelsea Garden. My hopes for Chelsea are that people will understand the message, they'll get to have a space where they can reflect, and that we actually bring a garden together that people enjoy.
This is a tribute garden to the NHS. The thousands and thousands of people, you know, from doctors and nurses, pharmacists, porters, kitchen staff, everyone who's come together in the last 18 months, you know, and given time and, you know, lives in some cases. I mean, this is really important, and it's made a huge impact on everybody. You know, if there's one message that comes out of this garden, it's that massive thank you to everyone who's worked in the NHS to kind of get us through what we've got through.
Naomi, congratulations. It's a beautiful garden. The visitors are looking at this garden, they're connecting with it, with the, you know, the story behind it, the reason why it's here.
Yeah.
Are you getting good feedback?
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you know, everyone's just saying it feels like a sanctuary, and I think that's what I was trying to achieve. So that makes it really, really nice feeling, knowing that I have achieved it.
Yeah, it's just such a lovely garden to be in.
Yeah.
How was the build?
Well, we had a few technical issues. It's a complicated water feature, and I was pushing the boat out a little bit, and I knew I was doing that. So we had a few issues, but we overcome them, and, you know, we're here today.
Yeah, being an ex-landscaper, I can see it. I mean, but the water, it works so well. It's very complicated.
Yeah.
But I love the way you planted around it and softened it. It feels as if it's just running through those borders nicely.
Yeah, and that was a plan. And also I wanted it to feel like the sound was really like trickling, not gushing water. So that was quite hard to achieve as well, you know.
Yeah. No, I think it's wonderful. Now, you got a silver medal. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, a bit like that.
Silver at Chelsea's great.
Yes, I know. I think, you know, we are always trying to, as designers, do better and do better. And I think, yeah.
I think people will be looking at this goal and think, why didn't it get a goal? But, you know, there's technicalities on the brief and the judges and, you know, they look at every tiny little
thing,
detail.
yeah, I know.
But, I mean, the overriding feeling I get is just, it's a fabulous garden. But it's also going to live on, isn't it?
Yeah, so the hard landscaping is going to Wexham Park Hospital, and all the soft landscaping, all the plants are going to Catherine House Hospice in Oxford. So, yeah, that's lovely. You know, such a nice thing to know that it's got a life.
Yeah,
after
a life
here.
after Chelsea.
Yeah, and it brings even more meaning to the whole garden. Really.
Well done, congratulations.
Thank you.
Water has been a key feature in so many Chelsea gardens down the years, and recently we've focused mainly on water as a benefit and a boon for wildlife, and that's wonderful. There's no better way of attracting wildlife to your garden than having a pond of some sort. But what I want to look at now is the way that water affects us, the gardeners, the people who use the gardens, because water is a very good way of controlling our moods, our emotions, and our well-being. Water in this garden is used with huge dynamic energy, working its way and jostling between rocks. And when you have water and rocks on a hillside together, what you have is something that invigorates and energizes you, but at the same time is curiously calming. It's as though it centers that energy and steers it where you want to be. So if you can take the natural exuberance of a mountainside with the water and then put it into your garden, you get the best of both worlds. This garden uses water in lots of different ways. For example, these pipes could be carrying water, they could be carrying molten metal, and there are places where it's corroded and you see this gold falling out. And I began to think about they're like the veins of a body, carrying the life force through. But then it arrives in a much more conventional manner. At the front of the garden, filled from one of these splits and cracks in the pipework, is a simple pond. They're running water over this shaft of golden metal to make it look as though it is liquid gold that is pouring down in here. This was an industrial landscape, and gradually it's reverting. And what's really interesting is even in the couple of days that I've been here at Chelsea, I've started to see little creatures, the odd fly, maybe a little beetle working across it, and you know that in time, this will revert to a truly rich environment. The next garden I'm going to see is on a much smaller scale. Chelsea is all about theatre and drama, and inevitably you have wonderful displays of water in all kinds of manners. But that doesn't mean to say that it has to be big. And here you have water that simply comes out of two spouts, falls into a clear basin where the bubbles gently rise, and immediately, as I sit here, I'm calming down. All stress is going. And you can do this in your garden. You just need a small basin, maybe an old tap you could rig where the water flows through, it will go down through gravel, and then a simple solar pump taking it back around again. And instantly, you have peace of mind.
Yeah, water can be absolutely magical in any size garden. And of course, plants can play just as crucial a role in helping create a calm and relaxing outdoor space too. And you can't go far wrong with plants like these lovely grasses fluttering in the wind. Here's Carol with her guide on how to choose the best ones for your outdoor space.
During the past few decades, grasses have become increasingly popular. Everybody wants them in their gardens now, and I'm not just talking about lawns. What is it about them that makes us want to grow them? Well, they bring qualities that no other plants can, and they fit in so brilliantly well with our naturalistic plantings. Who'd be without grasses? Although most of our ornamental grasses are growing gradually throughout the spring and summer, it's in the autumn when they come into their own and exhibit their beautiful qualities. This is Miscanthus sinensis flamingo. Sinensis just means from China, and flamingo obviously because these beautiful inflorescences take on soft pink tones. Not only are these colours soft, but also they feel soft and silky, but don't cut them down. They add so much to the winter picture, and they exhibit another side to their personality. On a frosty morning when you go out and there's very little to see, and they'll be twinkling in the winter sunshine. Another very attractive miscanthus with a difference is Miscanthus morning light. It has very slender blades and pale, pale variegation. It looks wonderful growing with different perennials. But it's this grass that I've really fallen in love with. This is Pennisetum aduana rubrum. How do you keep your hands off it? It's just so gorgeous with these great foxtails. Now, Pennisetums are quite a big family of grasses, and some of them are extremely hardy, but sadly, not this one. If you're growing it, grow it in a pot, because then you can take it in during the winter. And that way, you'll enjoy months and months of this sumptuous wine-coloured foliage and these lovely, soft pink foxtails. Well, most grasses love sunshine. They grow out in the open after all, but there are a few that really adore the shade, and this is one of them. This is Chasmanthum latifolium. It's otherwise known as wood oat, and you can see where the oatiness comes from. These seed heads aren't just ornamental. If you want to, you can grow a whole new batch from them. Collect the seeds, sprinkle it on the surface of seed compost, cover with grit, and up they'll spring. Or you can just let it do it itself. It's such a gracious grass. Well, I've left my favourite till last. This is Hakanacloa macra. It's a Japanese grass, and I've got it all over the place in my garden because I find it so tremendously useful. It's soft and lilting. There's such a wealth of grasses. There has to be one, or probably several, for absolutely everyone.
Of course, it's not just outdoors that plants can have such a therapeutic effect on us. Indoor plants are equally enriching, and many people are taking to them. In fact, I am myself. I'm just beginning to find out about houseplants. One of my favourites are aeoniums. And the beauty of these, of course, are that you can put them outdoors in the summer, then bring them indoors as the weather gets colder. One key thing to remember for aeoniums, and in fact all houseplants, is don't overwater them. You're going to kill them with kindness, much more than just letting them keep fairly dry. Anyway, Arit has been to meet a man who knows more than a thing or two about the power of houseplants for our mental and also our physical well-being.
Houseplants have undergone a revolution in popularity in the last 18 months. And it's no wonder, with so many of us working from home, greening up our indoor spaces has felt more important than ever. Here in the Great Pavilion, David Dominy has an exhibit to teach us how to grow indoor plants. David, the exhibit looks amazing, I have to say, well done. And I think it's going to really help people to understand that important question, why are indoor plants so important for us?
Yeah, well, as a human species, we're hardwired into being connected with nature, and the sight of green calms us. It reduces the cortisol within the body, which is a stress hormone.
But it's really important, isn't it, to understand why these plants are so good for us, because, you know, a lot of people sort of shy away from them.
Yeah, it's about choosing the right house plants. There's a lot of very, very easy to keep ones that if we have a good, positive experience growing, then it gives us encouragement and becomes a hobby. There are so many plants that help our mind, but also make us happy too. Now, just over here, I've got a display just for happy plants.
Great.
This particular section here are some of my little favourites as well. I mean, regarding it, the moment I smell this, I think of tropical holidays. Go on, have a...
Is just the most exquisite.
And I also like the steady movement. There's a lovely bathroom plant. You blow on it, you see the fluttering of the foliage, almost like lots of little butterflies.
And plants also have that physical benefit, don't they, about, you know, the actual way that they help the environment that we're in.
Absolutely, it's the quality of the air. You know, inside our room, certainly during autumn and winter when our windows are closed, there's a build-up of toxins from antiperspirants, cleaning products. Many plants have the ability, some more than others, to be able to neutralise those. Some plants will actually remove trichloroethylene and a lot of those toxins. But of course, they also produce oxygen, which makes us feel better and again helps our minds to work.
I certainly need that.
Plenty of oxygen and wine, that's the secret.
If you were going to pick one plant to start off with house plants, which one would you recommend?
Well, it's got to be an orchid. Totally beautiful. They're not as difficult to keep as you first think, because on a brightly lit windowsill, bathroom, never let them sit in water. Certainly worth giving them a go.
David, I think the exhibition's brilliant, and you're going to be busy because people are going to really want to engage and understand more about these plants, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
There is a temptation for British gardeners to cram their gardens with as many plants as possible. But this garden, called A Tranquil Space in the City, designed by Mika Misawa, is the exact opposite. Because this is about as minimal as a Chelsea garden has ever been. And yet it's really rich with beauty and, I think, good examples of how to make our own gardens better. Now, the Japanese have something they call ma. And that is the appreciation and the resulting manipulation of the space between things. And once you become aware of that space, you see it everywhere. So if you look at this miscanthus, for example, you have the perfect stems rising up, and then the flowering head splayed. But it's the gaps between them that form that beauty. The leaves of the acer, the spaces between the leaves. We have the clipped squares of euonymus forming a checkerboard, and you often see in Japanese gardens checkerboard moss. The gaps between the spaces are creating the whole. Now that's Japanese, and it's Japanese art and gardens, and I love it. But it actually relates to all our gardens, and you can see how to use that in almost every situation. This is Boodle's Secret Garden, designed by Tom Hoblin. And it shows how space is used, could be used, and how effective it is in any environment. For example, I came in a gap in the hedge. Now, when you're creating gaps, be it in a wall, a fence, or a hedge, there's a simple fact that you can use, that the taller the hedge or the fence is, the narrower the gap will seem. You come in here, you have an open area in the middle. But with the tree ferns, for example, you need the air around them to appreciate it. The shadows that are falling on the ground. It's the gaps between objects that make shadows dance. And of course, this garden is dominated by this wonderful reclaimed oak fence, almost a wall, of these wavy slats. But the gaps between them are just as much part of that wall as the solid oak. Space and the objects that create the space work together. So once you understand that in your garden, then it starts to come together and you start to control and manipulate the space. And that is both exciting and also will definitely make your garden look much better.
This week, Adam Frost has been looking at how we can incorporate design ideas found here at the show into our own gardens at home. And today he's offering up some Nordic inspiration from one of the sanctuary gardens.
This is the finished soul garden. Don't worry, I'm not stood right in the middle of a border. There's a path that winds its way through the trees here. But it's interesting because it's undulated, there's rocks in the way, so it slows the movement, which means your eyes are drawn to the floor, enjoying the detail of the ferns and the other small woodland plants. And then the planting comes across, and I know this is not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but you have to engage, so you have to push the plants out the way. And I think when we're designing our gardens and putting them together, we don't put enough thought into the paths. We think practical all the time, just A, B, but actually a little bit of movement. How are you going to move? Why are you going to move? Do you want to move quickly? Do you want to move slowly? All these sort of questions come up when you're designing the garden. It's interesting, because when I come down, all right, that's really undulated, it slows the movement. If I then give you a lovely wide, smooth path, you're more likely to walk as a couple, you'll walk quicker, but also you'll probably go out there in bare feet. So that actually selection of materials becomes really, really important. What I love about this is this material, though over here it's chunky and it really slows, over there they're cut slivers of stone. You would walk on that with bare feet. But what's wonderful is because it's the same material, it gives the whole thing a cohesion. He sits carefully. As I stepped down, I was thinking, I hope that works, otherwise this could be embarrassing. The next thing that's jumped out at me, it's got to be the materials, the wooden materials in this garden. I love the way that the horizontal deck then gets picked up in the vertical and then runs along the edge of this pool. So you've got stone here, stone there, and then the timber. So I'm more or less holding it together. It's nice, but I think it's probably just a little bit too cold for Mrs. Frost. Actually, the final point here is this building. And actually this, I know, is a sauna. Or, if you're in Finland, it's called a sauna. There you go. It's just a bit of information for the day, isn't it? And I know everybody's not going to build one of those, but with the last 18 months, 2 years, you know, a lot more people working at home. It might be a garden office, might be a workshop to escape to, in my case. But here, what I love, not just the colour, you know, that links lovely with the back fence, but again, it links with material. So you feel as if it just sort of sits into the background, and the way that the planting then wraps, it just sort of, the whole thing feels comfortable. But I told you it was a sauna, so it would be rude, wouldn't it? See you later.
Still to come up on tonight's coverage of the RHS Chelsea Flower Show 2021, an event supported by M&G. Mary Berry explores her secret passion for hostas when she visits the nursery of some Chelsea first-timers.
I'll be exploring how the colour palette you choose for your garden really can work wonders for your mood.
And we take to the skies with a designer who specialises in creating pocket gardens high above the city below. Down here on the ground, it's interesting what people get out of Chelsea, because everybody finds what they're looking for, don't they?
Well, there's a huge amount of inspiration. I think this year, the smaller garden, like the balcony gardens, container gardens, you don't have to have a big garden or necessarily a garden at all to find something for you here.
Yeah, there will be something for everybody. Well, earlier I caught up with someone who's definitely got the Chelsea bug. It's Zoe Ball, who says she finds nothing more relaxing than putting on her overalls, heading out into the garden, and learning about new flowers, buds and vegetables.
So I gather this is your first visit to Chelsea?
It is my first visit, Monty. I'm not quite sure what's taken me so long, but I'm like a child at Christmas. Everywhere you look, inspiration. It's absolutely wonderful.
Is it what you expected?
Well, I wasn't sure what to expect at all. And, you know, I guess it's different because it's normally in May, so the flowers and everything that you've got on show is different. But to me, it's more exciting than I could ever have imagined. I mean, just standing here, someone has created an old forge. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And the colours, all the autumnal colours. I'm taking a lot of notes, Monty.
Of course, what you're seeing is, as we all are for the first time, is Chelsea in September has a totally different palette. And actually, I have to say, feel than it does in May. So, of course, you're going to have to come back in May to get the full experience next year.
Yes, absolutely. I'm in. I'm buying my tickets the minute I can.
But you're a gardener, aren't you?
I would say I'm a beginner, Monty. It's kind of only a recent thing for me. I lived by the sea for 20 years, so it was quite tricky to grow very much at all. And somebody bought me some roses when I lost someone very dear to me, and a few people bought me roses, so I suddenly thought, actually, this is a really lovely thing to do, start gardening and start learning. So I started with pots and bought Arthur Parkinson's book, started with some dahlias, and then have just recently moved to a house with a potting shed inspired by you, Monty, a little greenhouse, and we've got the veg patch going. So it's all a learning curve, but the veg has been really good this year. We've had a lot.
It's been a good year, hasn't it?
Yeah, a really good year.
What have you
Carrots,
grown?
Courgettes, courgettes, wonderful. I've got a huge beast of a pumpkin growing at the moment. Not quite Ben White standards, who I've seen, and I got some lovely tips from Matt Oliver from the RHS about how to make my pumpkins a little bit bigger. But we've had courgettes and chilies and tomatoes and cucumbers and broccoli. To see the broccoli start here from seed and grow to these, absolutely glorious. So we've got to rotate now, improve the soil. I planted the sprouts too late, so they won't be ready for Christmas. They may be ready for spring.
They'll follow on later.
Okay.
I mean, clearly you're excited by that. You can see it, you can hear it in your voice, but what are you getting from it? What's it doing for you?
I think it's that I have a very busy life, like everybody. Mum, busy job, quite hectic, and I'm quite a hectic person. And my favourite part of the day is if I get half an hour, 20 minutes, 10 minutes, just pottering around in the garden, bit of pruning, planting some seeds, admiring the roses that have come up, trying to think about the beds and what to do with them next year. I love it. I love it for my head. I love it. It calms me down. And the pleasure from seeing things grow is wonderful. And also people start giving you plants from their gardens. Lovely Dave Goulson worked with us on the Radio 2 Bee Garden, and he passed me on some plants, so they've all gone in. And you're always learning, and your garden almost becomes like a little story of your family and your life.
It measures out your life to a certain extent, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
I mean, we're talking today a lot about well-being and mental health with gardening, and that's something that seems to have grown a lot over the last year, doesn't it?
I think especially during the pandemic, people really needed to be outside, and I think watching programmes like Gardener's World and Countryfile, or lovely Bob and Paul with their fishing, when we were all trapped and not able to see our loved ones, to be able to sort of look to the outdoors and see the simple pleasures that we can get from outdoor spaces, be that parks or growing something on your window box or in your garden. I think we really appreciate that more and more.
Well, thank you so much for talking to us, and enjoy the rest of your Chelsea.
I will. Real pleasure. Thank you, Monty.
Thank you.
Now, Chelsea wouldn't be Chelsea without the most decorated designer in its history. Sarah Everly has won gold in every single design category, but how has she adapted to creating a garden for a September show? Frances Tophill has been to find out.
This garden really blurs the boundary between a natural landscape and a garden. And although I'm sitting here in the middle of the Chelsea Flower Show, I really feel that I could be in the middle of the Highlands by a river. And it goes from the monumental, these huge boulders and enormous water feature that's almost a lake, to the minuscule of things like ivy-leaved toadflax, wild grasses, ferns, blechnum, mosses, meadowsweet, all nestled in amongst the rocks. But someone who can tell me all about it is Chelsea's most decorated garden designer, Sarah Eberly. So Sarah, congratulations, gold medal.
Thank you, I am so pleased.
Tell me about the concept behind this design though, because it's so striking.
This garden is about, in the main, the line in the psalm, "He restores my soul." So it's about a restorative garden, it's about a tranquil garden. It's a garden of healing, one could say. And it's certainly, I would say, a pause. When you sit on this rock, which is the destination rock,
yes,
and you close your eyes, you are in that place. You're sitting for a moment beside a stream, on a boulder, in an auspicious place.
You have fitted an awful lot in this space. How on earth have you managed this huge amount of construction?
You can't order a rock 2 meters by 450, so I had to go and select them all so that they're approximately what I want. The main rock, which is 7.5 tons, the one the water comes over, that I actually had to go and visit twice. And then it's my job to make sure it goes together when we get here. So quite a lot of pressure.
And this isn't just ending its life here. This is being built after Chelsea when all this is over.
I would be very disappointed if this garden didn't have an afterlife. So this garden is going to Winchester Hospice, a fabulous home where it can impart some of this tranquility and peace to patients and patients' families.
Well, I certainly think it's very inspiring, and I feel inspired to just sit here for as long as I possibly can and soak up a bit of this calmness.
I think I'm going to join you for a while.
Everyone's mental health can benefit from green spaces, and in the hustle and bustle of the city, it's even more important. And the London-based designer James Smith is brand new to Chelsea, and Rachel will be meeting him on his balcony show garden shortly. But here's how James goes about planning and creating a garden designed for sky-high living.
City centres, particularly London, very busy places. There's a lot of green space around, but public green space. People don't always realise that there are other private green spaces in and around the city, and that's quite often up on the roof. My name is James Smith. I'm a landscape architect and garden designer. I've been designing gardens for the last 16 years. It's my first time at Chelsea this year, designing a small balcony garden. I designed this rooftop garden in the centre of London. This garden was designed as a private residential space away from the busy city below. It's a minimal garden designed to have an area for relaxation, for entertaining, and just to enjoy the views that the city has to offer. There are lots of things that need to be considered when you're planning a roof garden. They're quite extreme environments. The microclimate on a roof terrace is a lot different to your normal garden. So you have extremes of wind, of rain and of sun, so plants have to be resilient to that kind of conditions. On the roof garden here we've got agapanthus. Agapanthus is a good plant to use in a roof terrace environment, up against the building slightly as well, so it gives a bit more protection from wind, stops them from getting battered about too much. At Chelsea this year I've designed a small balcony garden. It's only 5 by 2 metres. In my garden there are a number of key elements that make up the design. So I've cloaked the whole of the terrace floor of the balcony in planting, something that's a little bit unusual for that type of space. And I'm looking also to entice the senses by having elements such as sculpture, feature pots and subtle lighting as well. This building in the city has a very special roof garden designed for nature and biodiversity. It even has its own ecologist, Mark Patterson, who oversees the site. Wow, what an amazing roof garden. Fantastic space for biodiversity.
This is it's an 11-floor green roof. It was installed about 12 years ago as sedum carpet, and over the years about 70 species of flowering plant have sort of self-colonised the roof. And in addition to the things that have spontaneously colonised the roof themselves and assisted, we've been plug planting the roof and seeding the roof with a range of wildflowers to create more nectar and pollen for pollinating insects.
For my own garden at Chelsea, I'm just looking to use some quite roof green roof tolerant plants. I've looked at weaving some sedums in amongst some of the planting, but I was just wondering what you suggest for other perennials perhaps that I could use within the garden.
If you've got deep enough soil, Eryngium sea hollies, they've really thrived up here, and they're really good at drawing in the smaller solitary bees, the Lasioglossum and the yellow-faced bee. This is Cinfoin. This is a perennial wildflower, member of the pea family, and this has done really well in the roof. It's thrived in the dry conditions. It naturally grows in dry habitats within soils, but it's very drought tolerant, and it's also a superfood for bees. So it's really popular with bumblebees and also with the honeybees.
The roof garden on top of the building is amazing, and lots of inspiration for my own garden with regards to nature and increasing biodiversity. But further down the building, on another level, there's actually another really interesting space that I'd like to go and have a look at. So I'm looking to use some nice scented plants within the balcony garden just to help with the senses and, you know, have that lovely feeling when you go into the garden, you brush past something that's highly scented. It's a great planting combination to have a look at here as well. We've got the Erigeron. Mexican fleabane is the common name. It's a lovely, cheerful plant and does great in extreme conditions. Grows in little crevices and billows out over the side of planters as well. So I'm hoping to use that within my garden. Also, plants like lavender are also great. A Mediterranean style of planting, and everybody loves the smell of lavender as far as I know. Gardens can be great for wildlife, lots of benefits for ecology and nature, bringing in pollinators into the space, but they also have to work well for the individual as well. And I'm really trying with the balcony garden to improve people's mental health and well-being. And the balcony, although small, it hopefully demonstrates that anything is possible, even in the tightest of spaces.
And here I am on the finished garden with designer James, who really has showcased how you can elevate your balcony to great heights. And it's extraordinary. I mean, how many plants have you packed into this space?
We've tried to maximise every last inch of it. Yeah, really just to showcase how you can maximise every part of your small garden. Just because it's a balcony doesn't mean that you can't experiment with different plant combinations.
And how did your visit to the Numero Sky Garden, how did that filter through into the finished garden here?
At Numero it was very interesting to see the mix of plants that they have up there, and also there was edible plants woven in with normal planting and lots of scented plants as well, so to attract bumblebees. So the Nepeta was one that actually was a favourite there that the bumblebees absolutely loved, so we've got some of that on the corners, but also some lower growing varieties as well running through. I did have some Eryngiums originally planned as well because we saw them on the terrace and they were doing very well. However, their flowers decided to fade just before the show, so we haven't got those in, unfortunately.
Never mind, I don't think they're missed. And
no.
the Erigeron's beautiful, just
Thank
spilling
you.
over the edge of the pot there. I also absolutely love how you've got the edibles growing in the pots on the wall.
Yeah, again, it was just to show another element to the garden, a bit more sort of diversity for everyday use, so you could interchange these pots very easily. If the herbs are fading over time, you could just pick some up in your local supermarket or the garden centre and pop them in. And they're easily reachable and easily to maintain. They do require a bit more watering because they're smaller pots, they would tend to dry out, but you have got a little bit of shade cast from the arbutus trees here as well.
Yes, you've really managed to create that sort of microclimate feel here. What tips would you give to gardeners who've got a similar sort of space to make the absolute best of it?
I think just to try and sort of challenge yourself a bit really with the space, and don't be afraid of experimentation as well. So the planting here has been designed so there are lots of different species. So if one is not looking particularly great and it starts to fail, you can easily pop it out and try something new. And I think I try to get the plant as close to you as possible as well, so the bench you can sit down and you can then interact with the plants as well.
So not so much thinking out of the box, thinking out of the balcony.
Exactly, yes.
And going for it. I think it's an absolutely beautiful garden.
Thank you.
And exceptional what you've done with something of this size. Thank you, James.
Thanks very much.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Creating a therapeutic experience in our garden isn't just about the plants that we choose, but it's the colours that they have and the way we combine them together to create, well, an immersive experience and a particular mood. There's no better way to get energy into a border than fill it full of brightly coloured plants, just like this border here. I can feel it, it's very immersive and it's really uplifting. Now here in this spicy combination, we've got a mix of hardy and non-hardy plants. Things like this Rebecca, hardy perennial, but look at the colour of it, golden yellow with those black eyes, which is why it's called Black-Eyed Susan. And then dahlias. Now they're not fully hardy. We've got an orange one there, and we've got this lovely burgundy red over here. A clashing combination that really energises you. But also the backdrop of the ornamental bananas, the Ensetti with the light filtering through, looks great. But what makes it even more dramatic is the black fencing around the background, which intensifies all the colours in front of it even more. People are scared of using black in the garden, but it can be incredibly effective. Now, just standing in front of this border, whoa, it really lifts you. Ooh, well, after all that excitement, it's time to calm down a little bit, which means we turn to the cooler palette of colours, things like whites and blues and soft pinks, and combine those together. And this border really does create a strong mood. It relaxes me. There's something very comforting about it too. And I think it's because the blues and the whites, they reflect the sky and the clouds and then the water as well. So you feel as if it's just sort of washing over you to a degree. It's all about getting the proportions of colours right to create that lovely, relaxing mood. I could sit here all day. Now, just having white flowering plants all together creates a very different mood. And it's hard to pin down, really, but there's an honesty, there's a purity about it, and also there's a sort of cleansing quality too. But green is obviously a very dominant colour in the garden, but it's the harmony, it brings everything together, and it's the glue between the plants. And think about the proportion of colour to green, and an all-green garden in itself can be the most tranquil of all. But lastly, think also about discipline. Don't go for an all-white border and be tempted to throw a bit of pink or a bit of orange in, because it's going to break the magic and dilute that feeling you're aiming for in the first place.
Well, there are lots of really good ideas there, and as Joe just said, green is one of the most calming colours. And one of the finest species of plants to show variety of greens must surely be hostas. And Mary Berry went to meet some Chelsea first-timers a few weeks ago who were getting ready for the show and taking quite a gamble with their September exhibit.
My favourite flower in the garden is certainly a rose, but a little secret, I simply love hostas. In my garden, when September comes around, my hostas are certainly not looking at their finest. So I've come down to Sienna Hosta in the Surrey countryside to meet owner Chris Potts to see why he's decided to chance hostas at Chelsea. Chris, lovely to meet you.
And you, Mary.
What made you fall in love with hostas?
I think I bought my first hosta in 1986, and I thought, what a lovely looking plant. And they're quite architectural. And now with nearly 1,400 varieties, I think, here on the nursery, and believe it or not, just over 60,000 plants here at the moment.
Do you have any favourites?
I'll show you.
I'll follow you.
Fire Island is one of my personal favourites. Look at that, isn't that beautiful?
It's spectacular, and of course those stems look so good, the purple ones. This would be nice when it's high up and you can look through the stems.
Absolutely.
These hostas now are looking almost at their best, but come September, in my garden, they will be losing their leaves and dying off. How are you going to make sure that they're ready for Chelsea?
Well, we do have our secrets, but one of those secrets is where you grow the plants on the nursery. So in this growing tunnel here, it's underneath an enormous conifer, which creates a cool environment. That holds the plants back. So the more shade, the slower the plants are to move into their autumn colour.
Are you just a little bit worried? Ollie, lovely to see you.
Nice to meet you, Mary.
You are nursery manager here.
That's right.
I've got a few questions for you. One of the major problems with having hostas is that slugs and snails absolutely love them. Can you give us some tips?
Well, my first tip would be a garlic wash. I mean, smell that. It's particularly garlicky.
You can say that again. There's no doubt at all that is garlic. Right, I want the exact recipe and how to make it.
It's really, really easy. Roughly 2 bulbs of garlic, full bulbs. You don't need to peel them or anything like that.
Break them apart first?
No, just pop them into 2 litres of water. Boil it until it's soft. You just squash it up or mash it with a potato masher, and then you strain that out, and what you're left with is your concentrate. You only need a tablespoon of that into a 5-litre watering can and water it over your plants. It's the smell that will just keep them away. Another way, which one of our customers actually suggested to us, is copper scouring pads. And they almost act as like a barbed wire, and you can put them around the top of the pot and the slugs just won't cross them. But one foolproof way, which we found on the nursery is really effective, is actually using copper pots. Just drill some drainage holes at the bottom. You do need to line it.
What happens if you don't line it?
If you don't line it, the copper will leach into the soil, and that can damage some of the smaller, more dainty roots.
Right.
And then you could pot it up in that, and they look really attractive, and the slugs will not touch them.
For me, I like the idea of garlic because you can do it yourself, it keeps, and most importantly, you use it on the nursery. Must be good. What have you got in store for Chelsea?
We've got something very, very special lined up. We've commissioned a flower pot to be made in Cornwall, out of copper, and it's a huge flower pot. The plant that's going into it weighs nearly 1/4 of a tonne, quite significant.
We believe it's probably the biggest hosta that's ever been at Chelsea, so hopefully it blows everyone away.
You've got a very busy time ahead. Good luck with Chelsea.
Thank you, Mary. Nice to see you.
Your stand looks absolutely fantastic, but there is a large space where I was expected to see this giant hosta and this wonderful big copper pot. What happened?
Yeah, there's a bit of story there. So it looked absolutely fabulous up till about 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Ollie went off to get married to the lovely Jenna, and he walked off the nursery, and literally, as he left, one leaf started to look quite sad. And I
was missing you.
Yeah, it was my fault for leaving.
So literally leaf by leaf, and I knew we had a problem. Yeah. And holding plants back this late in the year, September, is so tricky. And it just started to look unhappy. And I just thought, oh, what's happened here?
Luckily, no one told me while I was away, because that would have been...
Yeah.
So you couldn't show it?
Chelsea's about perfection.
Yeah.
We couldn't bring it, so
we had to... Well, you have perfection. I mean, this is your first Chelsea.
Yeah.
You've got a gold medal. You must be thinking this is easy.
Well, it wasn't easy.
Rapidly bringing Plan B into action was a nightmare.
Yeah.
So we had to get all the available plants we had left together looking fabulous in a very short period of time. So it was super tricky, but but we're happy with the way it looks.
Well, clearly you're happy. And I mean, I grow a lot of hostas and I love them, but I have to say, at this time of year, to have them looking literally immaculate, untouched, is extraordinary. And clearly your techniques with copper and garlic wash work.
Yeah. Hasn't been stressful at all.
No, so, if there was one thing you'd say to people who are inspired, they see your stand and they're inspired about hostas, in terms of position and soil, what would you say is the best advice?
Shade, as much shade as you can give them. Some of the blues, the more shade, the better the colour is.
Okay.
Free draining soil.
Yeah, a lot of people have seen the pond in the display and then assume that they're bog plants, but they're really not.
Right.
Free draining soil.
So that's something that many people will be surprised at.
Yeah.
Free draining, not too wet.
No, they don't. That is quite a common misconception. Is they don't want to be wet. They like to have a bit of damp.
Well, that is really good advice, and thank you so much, and you must be very proud.
Yeah. Thank you, Monty. Thank you.
Every year, the BBC RHS People's Choice Award is presented to the designer of your favourite large show garden. Earlier on BBC One, Toby Buckland and Francis Tophill gave you a guide to the 6 main show gardens in contention. And here's a quick reminder of those gardens once more.
The Bodmin Jail, 60 degrees east, a garden between continents by the designers Ekaterina Zazukina and Carly Kershaw.
The Trailfinder's 50th anniversary garden by designer Jonathan Snow.
The Huangjiao Garden, designed by Peter Schmiel and Chin Yung Chen.
The Yeo Valley Organic Garden by designer Tom Massey, supported by Sarah Mead.
The Florence Nightingale Garden by designer Robert Myers.
The M&G Garden by designers Charlotte Harris and Hugo Bugg. There's still time to vote for your favourite garden. You've got till 10 p.m. tomorrow night. Just head to the website bbc.co.uk/Chelsea, where you'll also find the terms and conditions and privacy notice. Please don't vote if you're watching this programme on demand. And Sophie and I will be announcing the winner on Friday, BBC One at 7:30 p.m.
Right, we've got the key moment. This is the highlight of the programme, of the show.
It's your highlight.
Ask Monty and Joe, so come on, far away.
OK, Anna in Sussex asks, I've got a really large Acer outside the front of my house blocking the light. How much should I prune and when?
Well, I think the when first, I think when it's dormant, so I would say between mid-November and mid-February. And don't cut it back too hard, just thin it.
You've got to keep the graceful shape.
Yeah.
If you start trying to reduce the size, maybe take 1 in every 3 branches out, nice, clean secateurs.
Just create nice space, a bit of mar.
Yeah, a little bit of mar on a view through it. OK, Anonymous. A water feature in a garden is supposed to be very beneficial. I tried several times and all I got is lots and lots of mosquitoes and larvae. How to keep my water relatively larvae-free without chemicals?
Well, there are 2 ways. You either have moving water, which mosquitoes don't like, but then neither do frogs. I would just fill it with plants.
Yeah, plants will keep the water clean and getting a good balance of aquatics and marginals.
Let's have another question before we
moving on. OK, last one. Gillian Fisher, Twitter. Lots of seedlings are popping up in my garden at the moment. Cerinthe, calendula, etc. Does it mean they won't grow next year? As I assume the first frost will kill them.
Well, they might. But they might not.
They might not. I mean, you know, some of them are hardy. They'll get through the winter and then they'll grow nicely next year.
Exactly.
Well, that's all for tonight, I'm afraid. So don't forget you can keep sending your questions in for Ask Monty and Joe. We love receiving them, don't we, Monty?
Yes, we do indeed. And Angelica and Nick will be back on BBC One at 3:15 tomorrow afternoon. And Joe and I will be back on BBC Two at 8 o'clock, when we'll be looking at how gardeners can be a little bit more loving to our planet. You ready to love the planet, Joe?
I certainly am.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.